Welcome to Business Startup for Boomers. This is the show that brings you inspiration and ideas to start your own boomer business. Here's your hosts, Larry Aarons and Jeff Williams.
All right, hope you're doing well today. Hopefully we can inspire you today to become a successful entrepreneur as a boomer, and as a boomer myself, and Jeff certainly is. We've walked this path many, many times. Jeff's company is bizstarters.com, and he is the chief coach at bizstarters.com. I don't know if I'm retired, Jeff, or not. I'm working a lot these days.
Depends on the day, doesn't it?
It does. I've been really busy lately. I run a production company, and I'm doing all kinds of radio stuff, and it's all really fun and interesting, and so I'm having a good time. So I don't consider it work. It's a lot of fun. What we're doing in our series here is talking about different angles on becoming a boomer entrepreneur. And today let's talk about partnerships, Jeff. I think this is something that people think about when they're going into their own business. And today we have different kinds of partnerships. It's not just the old Mr. Smith and Mr. Jones are starting a business together and calling it the Smith & Jones Company. It's far beyond that, isn't it?
It sure is. It sure is. As a matter of fact, when you talk to longtime entrepreneurs who've had a legal partner, in other words, a partner that had an ownership interest in the company, quite often, unfortunately, you'll hear them say, boy, that ended and I never want to do one again. It's not always a happy experience. You know, you figure out half the marriages in America fail, so why would you be surprised if half the partnerships fail, too? But fortunately, there are several other forms of partnership today. Now, I will talk about legal partner at the end of this little episode, but let me talk about a couple other ways to partner, which can be a lot more comfortable for people than perhaps the traditional one. And I do these all the time.
Okay.
And the first one is what I call a transactional partnership. This is where you find someone in the marketplace who's not a competitor or maybe not a direct competitor. They might be competitive in that they sell something similar to you, but maybe they're a lot bigger than you are, and they're looking for someone to help implement a project for them, almost being a subcontractor. This is a way to partner today.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, when I started 25 years ago, the way I got my first income was by subcontracting to a much larger training company. This was a nationally distributed training company. They were looking for someone to do a regular set of presentations in the Chicago market. I happened to be located there, and they paid me a certain fixed amount of money to do these. And now, you know, as I've learned over the years, I make a lot more money doing it myself, but this was a really quick way to do it. So I partnered with them. We had a contract that said I would do certain things, they would do certain things. So transactional partnerships are designed to achieve some very specific goal. For example, last year I introduced a new ebook for sale. And I knew from past experience that a really effective way to initially market this would be to send it out to 10 or 15,000 email addresses. Well, I don't have 10 or 15,000 email addresses myself. So I went out in the marketplace, and I found some people who also talked to individuals over 50, and I said, how large are your email lists? And I found 3 people where in total they had 15,000 names. So I said, listen, would you be willing to enter into a partnership with me for, say, 90 days where I will promote this ebook? I'll write all the email promotion, and I'll do all the technical stuff, and we'll send out a series of messages with the goal of trying to sell this at $199. You will get 40% of $199 if the sale comes from your list. And we used a certain little technical capability that allowed us to see where the names were coming from. And they said, fine. So we had a little letter of agreement we did by email, just a little half-page thing that said, you know, who's going to do what. And I went about, did it, and when we put all the email addresses together, we had about 12,000 emails, including my in-house emails. So we went out and we sold about 200 copies of the book at $199. It took us not all of 90 days, but took us a large part of the 90 days. At the end of the 90 days, we all made some money, and I would have to say all the partners were happy, but they wanted to go do other things. So we said, fine, let's reconnect maybe sometime in the future. Well, we haven't reconnected yet, but the point is we could if we wanted to.
Well, that's nice.
So that's transactional partnership.
Look at it and Jeff, look at it as a way to get yourself off the ground as a business, and that's what you did. Right.
Now, I will tell you that the particular example I used of getting other people to offer up their email list, it's kind of hard to do that if you're a newbie. If you're just new in the marketplace, they're probably not going to want to give you access to their email. So this is kind of a little bit more advanced.
Right.
But the subcontracting partnership is definitely a way to get started.
Yeah.
So that's the second kind, which is a subcontracting.
Okay.
At any given time, there are much larger companies in your geographical area who are winning contracts and projects that they don't have all the manpower to do. And if you get connected to these people, and there's various ways to do it, through the Chamber of Commerce, through reading local newspaper stories, there's a lot of different ways to find these people. But you step up and you say, here's my skill set. Maybe send them a copy of your resume. Mm-hmm. And you say, I'm ready to step in and do this, this, and this. Let's talk money. And they'll say, okay, we'll give you $75 an hour. They're billing out at $300 an hour, so they're making good profit. And you go and do the project is defined. Let's say it takes 4 months to do the project. Usually you lay out several different points in time where you get paid. These are called progress payments because you don't want to wait until the end to get paid. And then you do the deal. And if it works well, then they may come back to you and say, hey, we'd like to do another one, but we need a couple months to get it together. Or they may just say, well, it was okay, but not great. Let's kind of part ways here. Mm-hmm. So that's a subcontracting partnership.
Not a bad way to go.
The third type of partnership is one that I use all the time, and that's what I call a lead-generating partnership. This is where you approach someone who you have reason to believe has a lot of access to the kind of people you want to sell to. In my case, 50-plussers who are looking to do something after they leave the corporate world.
Right.
And perhaps this company is offering them some kind of retirement device workshop, which is not competitive to what I do. But they're generating a lot of interest. They're getting a lot of names and email addresses. Well, that can be lead sharing. They provide me the leads in return for certain financial compensation. So that's a lead generating partnership. And what's nice about that is that it's for a limited period of time, and then you can stop and say, let's evaluate. Mm-hmm. The problem with legal partnerships is that once someone is given ownership in your company, it's really hard to stop and say, whoa, this isn't working very well. These other three partnerships all have a time element built into them, which allows you and the partners to stop and say, hey, how's this working?
That makes sense.
Which is ideal.
Yes.
Now, let's talk for just a minute about legal partnerships. I have had a legal partner, and we amicably separated because he was in Boston, I was in Chicago. We just realized we couldn't make this work at a distance. It's almost like a long-distance romance. Mm-hmm. And so we parted ways. But here's the one thing that actually two things that I recommend you think about when you're thinking of letting someone own part of what you're doing. Number one, you need to write down for yourself what are 2 or 3 reasons you want them as a partner. And I'll give you a couple of reasons that are not good for having a partner. Number one, do not bring somebody on as a partner solely because you need money.
Yeah.
You can get an investor.
Yeah, that's a bad
thing. Or you can borrow.
Yeah.
Number two, don't bring somebody on as a partner just because you don't want to do all the work.
That's a good reason. Okay.
You can hire an independent contractor through Guru.com or Craigslist to help you do things, like you did with your graphic design guy.
Yeah, it's a weak excuse. Go ahead.
Yeah. don't bring somebody on as a partner because you're afraid. That's not a good reason to do it. If you need to go get your own coach and get pumped up a bit here.
Yeah.
If you decide after thinking about, okay, here's why I need this partner. For example, it's not uncommon in successful partnerships to have a guy who runs like the back end of the company. He does the accounting, the tax filing, he deals with vendors, and then there's the front guy who's what they call the rainmaker. He's the sales guy. I've seen some very successful partnerships where you've got those two. It's like the television show, The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple type business. I've seen that work. But let me just recommend that you sit down and write down the piece of paper the answers to the following questions. Number one, how much ownership will each person get? Put down the percentage. Number two, what will each person contribute to the corporation? And there are occasions where one partner puts almost no money in but brings something else. They could bring technical knowledge. They could bring access to leads. They could bring connections to big players. That can be as acceptable as money, but you need to write it down.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're saying we're each going to take 50%, and this guy's putting up $10,000, the other guy's putting up almost nothing, well, what's he giving you of $10,000 value?
Right.
Number three, what will be the primary activities each partner will do on a daily basis to find them?
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, if you don't do this, what happens is suddenly the end of the month comes and nobody's done any accounting, and you don't know where you are.
Boy, that's so important. Delegate this out and who does what and what the accountability is to each other.
You need to be able to say, okay, now obviously sometimes there's going to be a crisis and it's all hands on deck, but in a customary week you need to say, okay, you're going to do these 3 or 4 things, I'm going to do these 3 or 4 things. The next one is if you have a difference of opinion, say there's 2 partners, I strongly recommend that you find a third person that both of you trust to be a tiebreaker.
Very interesting.
And I'll tell you where this particularly comes into play. When the company's 2 or 3 years old and one partner wants to grow faster than the other partner, this can be a real log jam. Particularly if the first partner says, let's go out and get a $100,000 credit line in order to grow faster, and the second partner really doesn't want to do that. Well, rather than have the partnership completely blow up, you've designated a third person. It could be a local attorney, a business consultant, could be someone you both trust.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down with them, and each partner presents their case, and this person says, okay, here's what I think you ought to do. Now, obviously, you have to put down in writing that you will accept the opinion of this third person. It's almost like dealing with a mediator.
Yeah.
Okay? And then the last part of the agreement, and this takes some really thinking, and that is if one of the partners wants to leave the partnership, how will you buy them out? I've seen companies crash and burn because they didn't have a good what's called buyout clause.
Mm-hmm.
Either didn't have one at all, and one partner ended up filing suit against the other one, or what happened was they didn't really define the formula, and suddenly the partner who wants to leave says, I want $250,000. And the other partner says, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah. We only did $100,000 last year's sales.
That's awkward. It's very awkward.
What's going on here?
Yeah.
So these are the things that I suggest. Now, you don't have to go to an attorney to do these. You can just list these down and sit down with your partner and just have it. Because to tell you the truth, if you can't have an honest conversation about these things at the beginning of the partnership, you probably shouldn't do the partnership.
That makes so much sense. Some great partnership ideas. If you want to talk more to Jeff about this or any other boomer business topic, just go over to the homepage. You're there now anyway, and at bizstarters.com, and where it says book a call with Jeff, do that. And this is what Jeff does as chief coach at bizstarters.com. Great material today, Jeff.
Well, thanks, Larry. This is a subject that particularly boomers like to talk about.
We'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening.
I like that.
This has been Business Startup for Boomers with your hosts Larry Aarons and Jeff Williams, the show that brings you inspiration and ideas to start your own boomer business. See you next time.